Hey everybody, Happy New Year and welcome back to my Slavic Saturday series where we talk about Slavic history, mythology, and folklore. I'm your host, Brendan Noble, and I am the author of the Frostmarked Chronicles, which is a fantasy book series based on Slavic mythology. This week in our New Year's celebration, I promised in my last video that I would talk about this festival called Koliada. It's a festival based around the winter solstice and the new year in Slavic paganism in the early Slavic times. That's kind of become a tradition in Christian times as well, and we'll talk about the origins of it in Slavic paganism and kind of how it's changed and what it's all about. Before I jump too far into Koliada though, I just wanted to remind you that for the Frostmarked Chronicles, the first book in the series, A Dagger in the Winds, I am looking for advanced readers for the book. Advanced readers receive a free ebook copy of the book in exchange for an honest review, either on Amazon or your favorite retailer. Check out the links down in the description below for a description of the book and also a place to apply. But now, let's dive into Koliada. So anyone who knows any little bit about Slavic mythology knows that cycles and the cycles of the year are very powerful in Slavic mythology and folklore. And this can kind of be seen through especially the spring and winter kind of fight that occurs between Yarilo, Dijavana, and Zivia and Vesna, who are gods of spring. Each has a different kind of role here to play, and you can look at their individual videos I have if you want to know more, and their conflict with Marzana and Morana, who is the goddess of winter. And this kind of conflict occurs both in the spring and autumn times, and kind of shows this conflict that occurs throughout the year, and the focus on the warmth versus the cold times, because cold winters can be pretty brutal in much of Eastern Europe. And that's why this festival, Koliada, is celebrated around the winter solstice, because it's the shortest time of the year, and it's starting, that means that the days are going to start getting longer. And so this actually marks the start of a new year in the Slavic pagan times. Instead of whatever January 1st we would consider, it was started around the winter solstice, because this would mark the long elongating of the years until the summer solstice, in which it starts going shorter again. And this was incredibly important in Slavic paganism and Slavic mythology, because the darkness often held many creatures and demons that were incredibly threatening. If you followed this channel at all, I've talked about a lot of them. And so this idea that the light would be coming to bring them out of this darkness was a very positive thing, because it meant safety, being away from these dark creatures, and it also meant the days are getting longer, the days are getting warmer, and it meant you'd eventually be able to soon plant your crops. You would be safe from the dark, deep winter. That was an often hard time, as food could often not be plentiful depending on how the harvest was. And so this was a celebration time of feasting on much of the harvest that people got from the autumn harvest festivals. And this festival could go on for 1 or 2 or even up to 12 days depending on the region. And this was a long festival. It was a celebration of the connection as well that occurs during many Slavic celebrations and holidays in pagan times, that there was a connection between Navia or Nav, which is the underworld, and Yavia or Yav, which is the terrestrial world in which we would be considered to living upon. And this connection was important because in Slavic pagan times, ancestors were considered revered not as highly as gods, but they were thought very highly of, and you had to honor them. So it was thought that you would, during this time, during the festivals, leave out a bowl for your ancestors to make sure that they could eat and partake in the meals as well. It was left out overnight in case they wanted to, I guess, eat while people were sleeping and things like that. And it was meant to be this honoring period in which it was thought that the souls from Navia would return and walk among the people of Yavia. And this was thought to be a positive thing. The souls of Navia were the people that led decent lives and went to the underworld and were returning to their families in a pretty positive way. Demons, typically in Slavic paganism and mythology, were typically thought to be people that never went to Navia because their souls, they either died in an unnatural way or lived an unnatural life, and they tended to be trapped in demonic bodies. So with this Koliada festival and the meals and everything that had around it, there would also be traditions where people would gather around the fire. And this is where this connection, with this kind of connection to the dead, is less positive. Because you would have the connection to the ancestors, which is a reverent positive thing, but then you would have the idea that demons and creatures and undead things could return during these dark periods when the spirits are strong and things at the end of the year, and it was needed some type of ritual to prevent them from attacking, because it was thought that they could attack cattle or attack people and kill them, and that was a dangerous thing. So what people would do would be to dress up in masks, either wooden or animal mask, kind of becoming what they would call the others, as they are meant to represent the demons. And it was thought that throughout this ritual around the fire that they took on and substituted themselves for the spirits of the demon, and therefore prevented the demons from returning during the festival and protected the people. But as the spirits of the demons, they would do things like playing tricks, like trying to take logs from the fire to take away the light, and things like that. But it was thought that this was less threatening than demons coming and killing your children. So that was thought to be a distraction or a way to defend against the demons coming. During the celebration around the fire as well, Veles, god of the underworld, cattle, lowlands, magic, and a whole lot of other stuff, is thought to make an appearance. He is often thought to be the one that's revered most during this festival, and it's unsure exactly why that is. Veles has so many roles, especially that kind of vary a little bit by region. It can be kind of hard to pin down sometimes. He was thought often to be connected to winter, sometimes substituting for Marzana or Morana in winter time, depending on, again, the region. It could also be thought because he had a connection to divination, and again, the underworld, so potentially all these things come in. The connection to divination, though, is important here because it's the start of a new year. People were looking to see how the next year was going to turn out, which people are probably looking out right now in 2021, hoping it appears better than 2020. In Veles, what he would do is appear as the old man form that he appears as often. You can watch my video on him if you would like to know more about that. But what Veles does is he appears, kind of plays tricks on people because he's a little bit of a deceptive. He uses deception. That was the word I was looking for. And he would tell them and divine to them what was coming, potentially give advice to them. And then what he would do is hit a specific log in the fire called the Budnik log. That's kind of also similar to the Yule log that's in Germanic traditions. And he would hit this, and if the sparks that come out of this are long, then it was thought to be going to be a good year in the next year. And if the sparks coming out of it were short, then it was thought that it was going to be a bad year in the next year. And this was part of the traditions, is that Veles would appear with this. And as well, this divination thing was also popular, especially among girls during this time. Some people did it connected to whether the harvest was going to be good in the coming year and things like that, but girls typically were often thought to do a little bit more of the divination in Slavic paganism and mythology anyway. But the girls would sometimes one way to do it was they would take a bowl of water and pour wax into it and see what fills up, and it was thought to be who's their husband's going to be, or if they're going to find a husband in the coming year. It's one of the traditions that would come about. And in the end, it is just a festival with Koliada that is meant to be a symbol of hope of the coming year, that the days are going to be getting longer, that the crops are going to grow soon, and that the long, terrible, sometimes winter is going to come to an end. Now, let's look at a connection that some people often try to bring in with Koliada or Koliada, and that is a potential god or goddess called Koliada or Koliada. And this is something I'm not completely convinced by. There's not a ton of evidence out there. There's not a ton of evidence for a lot of Slavic mythology due to lack of primary sources. Thank you, Romans and early Christian priests that destroyed a lot of that. But there's the problem with there's almost nothing, not even stories about this god or goddess Koliada. It's thought that potentially this was meant to be connected to the festival as a god or goddess of the sun or of winter, depending on, again, what the story was. and that potentially was thought to be where the festival got its name from, but I find this incredibly unconvincing. I've done a lot of research and I haven't found much legitimate evidence at all for Koliada as a god or goddess, but I just thought it was worth bringing up because it's a thing that's often discussed. And now, in modern times, Koliada has had a role on Christianity, as I mentioned before, where it's become a bit of a association with the Christmas time itself. Like many festivals in Slavic paganism or in other types of pagan traditions, if they couldn't, in early medieval Christian times, take away the holiday completely, what they would do is just kind of attach it to a Christian one or replace it with a Christian one and allow some of the traditions to continue on. Koliada is one of those, and today it kind of has its term replaced. It follows along with the traditions of singing carols and dressing up and going between doors and knocking and asking for either treats or some type of other little gift associated with Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, depending on the country. And so Koliada would often, if you go to one of those countries today, you said Koliada, probably most people would think of it as something associated with that. And it's about to be a kind of a fun connection time, which is kind of interesting, where some of the traditions of dressing up and things, though not as scary as demons, has continued today. And then in my own books, in the Frostmarked Chronicles, Koliada does not appear, at least early in the series, due to the fact that the first couple books take place in spring and summer, and Koliada obviously takes place in winter, so it just doesn't have it in the terms of time frame. But I am expecting it to appear later in the series and form a specific important role for that, that you'll have to find out, especially because the connection with winter in the series that you may be able to tell by the name The Frostmarked Chronicles. And that's all I have for you today on my Slavic Saturday series. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe down below, and also click the links down below. I've got information about my books, as well as a text post if you'd like to read instead of watch as well. But until then, I will look forward to seeing you guys next week, where we go back and talk more about Slavic mythology.